Welcome, fellow Earthlings. Today I have Deborah
Olszta,
and Glenn Ouellette, whom is one of our producers and a community advocate who's also running for mayor. And Deborah is an education matters advocate. And they wanted to share some information with you, so please go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Ginger, for having me on, and Glenn, too, because Glenn was very instrumental on the happenings that took place on Monday night at the Board of School Committee and on parental rights. And so I just wanted to go over a few things to let the folks know at home about what happened, because they probably don't understand what happened totally. Well, a little history is that now we have Common Core in the schools. Common Core is basically an untested, unproven reform, educational reform, that parents are very skeptical about, and with good reason, because we've had examples of curriculum that has come down that is associated with the standards, the Common Core standards, that parents are not happy about. For instance, there's a lot of math problems that are just crazy. If we thought we had it bad with new math when we were kids, I mean, now it's even worse. And I don't know where they're getting all this research, but it certainly is putting students in a tizzy. They're frustrated, they're confused, and they're coming home with anxieties that weren't there before. And so now parents are in a predicament of what to do with these children. They have to go to school, but they don't want to go to school anymore, and especially the lower grades, like third grade or first to junior high, actually.
Yeah.
The elementary school.
Too much pressure.
And so if your child is having anxiety, his stomach aches, headaches, doesn't want to go to school, well, the mother takes him to the doctors. Then what happens? The doctor says, well, I don't really understand why. Some doctors are keen and they say, well, it's Common Core.
Or they'll say it's child abuse.
Well, other doctors will say that the student's having a problem. We can fix it. We'll give them a drug.
Oh,
Really?
So, and that alleviates parents' problem.
yeah, but not the child's.
No. You know, if he's vomiting, whatever, and anxious about going to school in the morning, just give him an
Whatever.
something to settle his stomach or whatever, so he can go to school. But then the side effects, and it just goes on. And parents, I know you're in a predicament here, and so we're just trying to help you out, because we know you're busy, you're working. I've raised my kids. I know what it was like when they were kids, and I know what you're going through now, and it's a lot of pressure that you're under and working and trying to raise a family. So I'm kind of helping out a little, if you don't mind. So, and not too long ago, Virginia Berry, the Commissioner of Education, came out with a technical advisory to the schools on the Smarter Balance Assessment. Now, the statewide Smarter Balance Assessment is for all students, supposedly, and the state law says that all students shall be tested or assessed. Well, that directive is to the schools or to the district, not to the parent. All students shall participate means that the district shall not leave out any student unless the parent objects, because the parents always have the right to object and to direct the child's education in the manner they see fit. So they can't be violating parents' rights. So the directive, we know, is not to parents and to the school to make parents comply with their child taking the test, but it's to them not excluding any child that they possibly might want to exclude, maybe to boost up the scores. We'll leave out some at the bottom maybe. And no, they're not allowed to leave out anybody, but when a parent determines they want to opt out, or the word is refuse the assessment, that's totally in their right to do. So this directive came down and was totally, I don't have time to read it all, but totally illegal to say that the parents have no rights and that the school district will override the rights.
I have a quick question. who designed or who came up with the wording for all of these testing things for these students? I mean, it almost looks like conspiracy of some kind.
Well, the Smarter Balance consortium is Pearson. Pearson is like a textbook company.
I knew you were going to say that. It's all about the
Money.
contracts for the books.
How
Yes.
about money?
And there's a
God
lot of money
bless
because the federal
America.
government helped fund it, tunes of millions and millions of dollars. So there's two consortiums that they funded. Park owns both of them. And so it's Pearson owns both of them. It's Park, P-A-R-C-C. Some states use Park, some states use Smarter
Smarter
Balance.
Balance.
New Hampshire uses Smarter Balance. They're both basically the same.
Let me get you off here. We learned in this last week, this past week, that the Commissioner of Education, Virginia Berry, says that the Smarter Balance test is a good test and it will educate our kids. Yet, the one below her, the Deputy Commissioner of Education, made it very clear in his press conference last week that this is really a dummy test. It's not going to educate our kids. In fact, it's a failed test. They're expecting 30 to 70% of the systems to fail, the kids who take the test. So it's made to fail, number one. Number two is we're doing it not to educate them or improve their education,
To weed
but
them
to
out.
take the money,
You know-
take the federal money.
To
What
get-
I
to
don't
get the
understand
money.
is how can they test a child who hasn't been educated in the system that they're presenting
Well,
the testing of?
especially
It's a
the
good
third grade.
question, Ginger, because it's not an academic achievement
It's
test
not.
where it's grade appropriate. Okay, this is not anything about academic achievement. It's about an assessment of your kids for the federal government's information. So they'll put a wide range of questions and examples just to find out where your child falls on the spectrum. Now, some say, they have good reason to say, that this assessment is about assessing your child's values, attitudes, and beliefs. And therefore, there are millions of parents around the country who are refusing their children to take this test.
What does their beliefs have to do with education?
Well, that's the point. And the federal
Government
government has no business
That's right.
knowing what our business is in our personal family lives or our personal lives. But the government wants to know. And third parties want to know. Third parties can be textbook companies, they can be
Business
researchers, they can be anybody who has an interest in our kids for profit.
Exactly.
Okay, so I just want to read
Go ahead.
the memo that the school board voted on Monday night for the parents to know. And this is very important, folks, that this happened. We're very appreciative of the board for giving this memo to the parents in the Manchester School District.
It's been a long fight.
It was a long fight, and unfortunately, we had to have an attorney there. Because this wouldn't have happened without the attorney sitting there protecting and preserving
The process.
the parents' rights.
That's right.
Because our rights are being trampled every single day. Parents in the school's rights are being trampled every day. The children do not belong to the school. They belong to the parent. And the parent gets the prerogative to say yes or no. So anyhow, I'm going to just read this because it's just a couple paragraphs here, and it's very important. This is on the front page of the Manchester School District's website. And this testing is going on now for months. Okay, different
Starts
grades
Monday.
are going to different grades are going to have different testing periods, but it starts on the 16th of March and ends on June 5th. So that's quite a time, and
Can't the parents protest and not let their kids go to school and take the test?
well, the point is that we don't want parents to have to be burdened with finding a sitter or someone to watch the kids while they have to go to work. Now this is a 7.5-hour test for a third grader.
In one day.
On the computer.
No, it won't be in one
No,
day.
it won't be 2 hours at a time, I think they said.
2 hours, 90 minutes, 2 hours. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how long. The child is having to sit in front of the computer, answer questions. A third grader just don't believe he has mastery of the computer.
Well, first of all, parents do not allow a third grader 90 minutes at one time in front of a computer. They just don't do that.
So anyhow,
Okay, go ahead.
the Manchester School District has provided a remedy for parents and has acknowledged parental rights, and to their credit. So March 9th, the school board voted yes to. It says, "Dear parent, guardian, the Manchester School District is required by state and federal law to administer the Smarter Balanced Assessment. It will take place starting March 16th, 2015, and must be completed by June 5th, 2015. Students in grades 3 through 8 and grade 11 are scheduled to take the assessment. It has come to the attention of the Manchester School District Board of School Committee that some parents object to the administration of the test and intend to keep their student from school when the test will be administered. While the Manchester School District is prohibited from encouraging non-participation in the Smarter Balanced Assessment process, rather than keeping students home from school during the administration of the testing, upon written or emailed notification by the parent or guardian, the student will be relocated and provided alternative programming during the applicable testing period. There will be no penalty to parents or students who do not participate in the assessment. If you have any questions about the assessment or wish for more information, please contact your child's principal." And this was posted on the 10th of March, the day after the school board meeting. So now your child can go to school and be led to whatever room they're going to have for students to read a book or to, write a paper or draw a picture or whatever during the testing time. And so we appreciate the school board for doing that. I think it's a reasonable
It's a good alternative.
way of taking care of the matter and the objections of parents. And now this doesn't happen in all school districts.
That's the sad part.
That is the sad part. And so
We were able to get an attorney from Manchester and Nashua, which are the two biggest schools in the state. Nashua got some of what they wanted, but not all of what they wanted. We got pretty much all of what we wanted. Actually,
Yeah.
we got all of it.
the Nashua School Board members were quite obstinate towards parents' rights, and all they gave parents, or all they acknowledged for parents' rights, was that the parents could keep their kid home and have an excused absence. So now I don't know what happens to a parent who brings their child to school in the morning, and the testing maybe begins at 9 or 10, whatever, and the child is there. Well, are they going, if they know that the parent has given a written notification that they don't want their son or daughter tested, what are they going to do with that child? Are they going to override a parent's wishes, which are fundamental rights upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court? We do have an attorney.
I don't get the gall of these people.
We do have an attorney in waiting.
It's truly amazing to me to see and hear this. It's going on American
The
soil.
audacity of school administrators to do this to
Well,
parents.
you know what? They're getting greased. There's a wheel that's being greased. Okay, that's the only perception that
Yeah.
applies here.
It is for the money. It's not for academic information.
And then they need slave labor for the future.
Yeah.
$1.298 an hour.
Pretty well said, I guess. But I will tell you that some schools, specifically in Alton, where parents have been told, when parents call the school, email the school, written the school, and told the principal or assistant principals, my child does not have permission. You do not have permission. You do not have permission to administer this test to my child. Their response to them is, if your child comes to school, even though you object, we will administer. If your child stays home, we will send the truant officer to pick up your kids, and they will be administered. Some school district will not even honor parental rights whatsoever. It's against the Constitution of the USA and of the state of New Hampshire.
Somebody ought to investigate these people at the federal level.
So it's the federal level that's causing a lot of the problems.
But that's what I'm saying. The federal law, some kind of law enforcement has to be looking into these people.
Well, it's the way it's being carried out. All
back
students
door.
shall participate does not mean that you have no rights. as a parent. It means that the school shall not exclude any subgroup, like, any, like the refugees, for instance.
We understand that.
They can't be excluded. Well, but parents can opt out. Parents can refuse. That never has changed. The laws there have never changed. But these people in school administrations are overreach their
Well, then they got
authority.
permission. They got permission to do that from somebody even higher up, because they wouldn't dare to do that on their own. They've gotten permission.
Oh, we know that.
Well, Manchester, I mean, we have Attorney Sarah Ambrosi on our school board, and as an attorney, she knows.
But we're talking to state level here.
The state level, I mean, but at the
They are
local level,
overreaching.
even though they have received the mandates from Commissioner Barry at the New Hampshire DOE, Sarah Ambrosi knew that to go against this for parents
Would be unconstitutional.
would be a nightmare, a legal nightmare in the city. And unfortunately, we have to come to school board meetings with our attorneys, which makes things crazy, but
Well, at least it shows some of these idiots that call themselves professionals that you're just not going to write over a person's rights, that the law still applies.
right. So now we have different school districts in different parts of the state that are enforcing in different ways, which is unequal and inequitable. So it's too bad.
this is really scary, because while she's talking about this, all I can see is Hitler in my head, with all these little Gestapo
That's how it
stepping
started.
people just taking over the rights of the people of the community, one level at a time.
Right. On the other note, contrary to what state law says, like all students shall participate, and the interpretation by the administration and the DOE, New Hampshire DOE, we have another piece in the New Hampshire on the website, and it is the New Hampshire statewide assessment, state-approved special considerations for not participating in the statewide assessment. And it's interesting how this says, it's just a couple sentences here, districts must juggle state requirements, student needs, and parents' wishes. Despite a district's best efforts, situations will arise that prohibit the inclusion of every student. They have the obligation to include every student, but here is the disclaimer
Yeah.
that says that they really can't include every student. And they say extended absences, family vacations, significant medical and emotional issues, and parent refusals are but a few of the issues that are not entirely within the district's control. Students who do not participate are reported in two different ways on assessment reports. Did not participate for state-approved reasons, those are medical or death in the family, and did not participate for other reasons. So the students who do not participate by a parental refusal will be reported as did not participate for other reasons. It'll be a column on the report for other. And there have been hundreds of parents who have not refused for the kneecap and over the years.
You know what scares me a little bit about that report is that even though refugees are still not American, but they're going to American schools to be taught, how can a refugee parent understand the nuances of the rights of a citizen when they're new to this country?
Right. They will have to have an advocate for them, for their group, okay, their subgroup. And perhaps they can get in touch with us. Some of the leaders in their subgroups can get in touch with us, and we'll help them out. Because if they do not speak English, they do not write English, they've just been in the country maybe for less than a year, and it is not right to insist that that child be put at a computer and sit there for 7.5 hours over a 3 or 4 day period, okay, and sit there to cry.
And remember, some of these refugee kids who just come into the country don't speak enough English, very little, if none at all, never seen a computer, they don't have them in their country. They can't sit there for 7.5 hours, and
Right.
they can't even read it. So my objective was, for the first 2 to 3 years, it's called common sense. you teach them the English vocabulary. When you know they can comprehend, then you include them. If you want to test them separately, that's okay. But if you include them with all the other students, it brings down the whole system. And that's not a fair system.
Of course not.
Well, we know it's all about the money.
Yes.
So all they really need the student to do is to log in and whatever they have to do to get
And
on
they get- and
to
they
get into the
compensated.
system. That all that information and data is going to the federal government. And so the worse they do on the scores, the better it is for the district because they get more money.
See what I mean? So it's
It's
not
a-
about educating. It's about de-educating.
It's despicable. It's worse than despicable. It's another form of slavery. You're using human beings to elicit funding to keep your particular town or city going.
Now, and the other thing is that we're going to pit one town against another.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Manchester is a very a community that is exclusive in its diversity compared to Bedford or to other communities. You can't compare Manchester with other communities.
What does that mean, exclusive?
Well, I'm just saying it's
We have 98 nationalities in our.
It's-
Well, that's, yeah.
It's different.
That's the American melting pot.
Yes, and in our schools we have 82 languages. Bedford doesn't have 82 languages.
But
You
when the
can't- you
report
can't
comes
compete.
out, Bedford is going to score higher, and that's going to be a better school system.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're going to, all these reports, when you go to buy a house, and and you
It's not a fair standard.
where do you
Of
want to
course
send your
not.
kids to school? Well, and they can charge higher taxes in Bedford, but Manchester will be at the bottom of the barrel if
Well, Manchester has done it to itself. The political structure of this community for the last 25 years that I've lived here has subjugated just about every right that any citizen has that is not acceptable to City Hall. So they brought this on themselves.
That may be so, but on this testing here, it is the state that's creating these problems. And
But it's
when-
fed by the city, Glenn.
It's-
It's fed by the information
it's
they
fed
get
by
from the city.
because the state is demanding it, and so is the feds. We have to follow their rules, or we don't get our money, and that's where it's wrong. You do not include all the students of a school in the same category overall, because if you do that, the smart kids get lowered down, and that's not a fair subject. And that's why they do have some categories, but in the end, it's the whole system.
they're just taking data and they're going to shove it one
They're
way
gonna
or
fudge
another.
it.
Talk about the
and
400.
they're going to use it to manipulate our city.
Yes.
You have a 3:30 appointment?
Yes, please.
Talk
So-
about the 400 if you had a few minutes.
The 400 data points, I'm not quite sure where that came from, but we know that the federal government is asking questions in such a way so that they get this data off this test. And it's private information for our families.
You wouldn't give it to strangers. Why would you give it to the government?
And so parents should think twice about it, allowing their children to participate. They should do some research. You can go to a website, Stop Common Core in New Hampshire, on Facebook. Usually on the Facebook, all the parents, the mothers are Facebooking each other, and all these groups that are providing information are there. So Stop Common Core in New Hampshire. There is a website that goes with that as well. And we have, where's my paper here? Manchester Parents Against Common Core is another one. And also my Facebook page, Deborah Olszta, Olszta. And there's tons of information.
Deborah Olszta what?
Deborah Olszta on Facebook.
Oh, Facebook.
Facebook, Deborah Olszta. And also Manchester School District. There's 2 Manchester School District Facebook pages. And one is a more, it's managed by someone in the school district, and the other one is managed by a concerned parent. And so there's also lots of information. And also there's a form. The refusal form is on these websites.
And it's addressed.
Facebook pages.
This one here, and I have still about 75 of them left. So if parents have a hard time and can't write a letter and want one already written for them, just filling the blanks, it's addressed to the Manchester School District. Call me at 603-289-6835, and I will get you a copy, and you can send it in to the school. But you need to do it quick because the test starts on Monday.
That's on Monday for grades 3 through 5, I think.
I think one of the most upsetting thing is that, yes, we finally got what needed to be done, but it happened at the last minute.
Exactly. And that's what they
There are
count on.
reasons for everything.
You know, that's how they do things.
Well,
But
I
at
think
least
we're on a
better
right
off than some
track.
others.
We appreciate what you've done for the district, Glenn, in bringing forward, helping to bring forward the attorney, and also for advocating for parents' rights. I don't see any other mayoral candidate advocating for mayoral rights, although Mayor Gatzis did, try to help move that vote along on Monday night, and so we appreciate him doing that as
do.
well. And so I think we're in a good place in Manchester, so far so good, for parents to be able to advocate for their children and do the best they can. And watch what's going on. Watch your kids' homework. Watch the assignments that they're getting.
And ask the kids what's going on at school.
Yes.
And-
And also watch the kids' behavior. If you see an extreme change of sadness and crying and depression, try to find out what's going on. More often than not,
And-
they'll tell you it's the school.
Not
It's
only
too
that, but
much
they still have to
information.
put up with the bullying factor and the teasing and all the other, extraneous.
When you're
is that
putting
the word?
on students, especially in the younger grades, lessons on social justice, okay, that's way too much information for a third grader,
Kids
even
need
a
to
fourth
be
grader.
allowed to be kids.
Their
And-
brains are still
Not developed,
developing.
yes.
An idiot could know that if some of these people that have these titles appear to be an idiot.
Yeah,
We should be
Because
more-
because the brain develops at the speed it's supposed to
That's right.
develop.
Right.
We should be more concerned about making sure that students who are in the junior high and high schools who have that developed, that we make sure that they're responsible, and less concerned about kids being kids. They're not supposed to be adults by the third grade. They're supposed to be kids.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'll just give the attorney's phone number in case any parent feels like they need to contact an attorney just to get some clarification about maybe something they're concerned about with the testing, and maybe they don't want the testing for their child. And the number is in Manchester, 622-8100, and that's Attorney Skinner.
Or you can go to
Let me borrow your pen.
NewHampshireHelp.com. NewHampshireHelp.com. You can keep that one.
Oh, thank you.
All right, folks. I
Thank
think
you.
we've covered
As
it.
usual. Thank you so very much.
You're very
If you have more to say, stay.
No, I would just say that at the 4 o'clock show, I'm going to dedicate almost 20 minutes on this and actually go more prevalent and discuss the House bills that passed yesterday, and now we need to go to the Senate bills, which will be in April.
That's very important as well.
Very important.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, as usual.
Thank you very much.
I'll be seeing you later.
Talk to you later.
Deborah.
Do you want to talk about Monsanto?
Oh, Monsanto, go ahead.
Monsanto, you've heard Ginger talk a lot about that, for good reasons. But when they passed the bill in the Congress last year, they pushed it underneath where nobody could see it, and to a very important bill, and it was called the budget. So to pass the budget, you had to vote in the bill. That bill should have been just the budget. So they squeezed it in, and what it says in that bill is, and now it's been passed, is that if Monsanto provides you with seeds and you grow them, and the food comes to them and poisons you, they're not responsible. Yet we all know that's not how society works. Well, come to find out, they tried to steal a patent. The patent doesn't belong to them. So when they found out they couldn't own it, they squeezed it under, and our Congress people passed it. And they shouldn't have. They weren't on the ball. So now the guy who owns the patent, he's saying, wait a minute here. I own the patent. The federal government has awarded it to me. And finally, he's not a very rich man, but he's got an attorney, and it's going to go to court. And I suspect it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And let's face it, if you own a patent, it belongs to you. It cannot be taken away. So the Congress will have to go back undo what they did and correct it.
Now, what kind of a patent? Because
It's-
if this man had a patent that still poisons people,
No, the patent that he had wasn't doing what Monsanto was doing. They're adding all these chemicals to these
Yeah.
seeds. They're reinventing the seeds. Let me give you an example. If you have a chick, if you have a duckling, and you have a chicken, a chick or a chicken, and you insert them to become one, you're going to have a different beast. It doesn't make it right. And that's what they did with the seeds.
oh, of course
They're
not.
making the seeds grow faster.
They're Frankenstein
And
seeds.
for example, the corn, a lot of the corn is being fed to animals. The pork, for example, the pigs. And so we're eating all that stuff that they've ingested. That's what they're growing on. Some of the cows, for example, has nothing to do with Monsanto, but it has to do
Yes,
with
it does.
Or it does. They feed them things like
the grains. that
not
they-
just the grain, but they also put in their food. They put in their water. They put when you're sick, you have to be on antibiotics. Well, you know what? If we take antibiotics at the wrong time, our system gets immune to it. So when you really need them, it won't work. So it's all about making money. It's not about making you healthy. It's about making money.
The way that these companies make money is that they have to pay off a whole lot of perceived get on board the greed train, because the law is not supposed to be bought and paid for. It's supposed to stand on its own. So the fact that all of these things are happening, it is being sanctioned by certain members of the Congress and the Senate, and even Homeland Security.
Plus, one company should not own all the seeds of the world. It just shouldn't be.
Well, no, of course not. There's also DuPont, the DuPont Chemical Company, as well as Ron DuPont here poisoning people in their own apartments. But the point is that our government appears to have become so corrupted by the people that have allowed themselves to become corrupted just to get on that gravy train is what is crippling our country. Because if they were really lawmakers and law providers, these companies couldn't get to where they've gotten to.
To be honest about it, Ginger, a lot of these companies have these elected officials in their pockets.
Of course. I just said that.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm being blunt about it. When it comes to election times, where did they get their money from? Mostly from big corporations. They give them more money than you can by law.
Not only that, but then you have their staffs. The Democratic Party has inundated me with reminding me that I didn't donate to the Democratic Party. And I wrote them back and I told them I'm an independent. And I said, you people get enough money from the big companies. You don't need my couple of dollars.
It's funny how you say that. I'm an independent too, and I get both Democratic and Republican surveys, and I get, please give us money. I'm saying, well, I don't belong to your party. I'll fill the survey because I don't mind filling that and give you my opinion, but I'm not giving you no money.
No.
I got to go get ready for my
All right.
show, but so thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
having
Thank
us
you
on.
for coming.
I appreciate it.
We appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
This is the same sing-song that we talk about every week. Some part of the system that begins at the local level and graduates to the state and then to the federal. It's like a letter that's missing some of its steps, so that you can't always you have to reach over the broken steps to get to the next solid step, and then keep trying to get to the top, so that somebody at the top who is supposed to oversee all of these processes at the state and local level start looking into it. But that's not the case. That is not the case. We have local people here that come to the station, and they make fun of everybody and everything, but they don't look at themselves. They appear to be so blind, or they've been blinded by the fact that they're in with this club, that they don't see that these rules that are being violated are going to affect them eventually, or their children, or their grandchildren. Poisonous water, poisonous foods, aspartame, seeds that contain very life-threatening chemicals in them. The education factor, the hazing that goes on at the local, state, and federal level of education. I mean, it's like a battlefield. And you know, and they just sit there, ha, ha, ha. Look at me, I'm cute, I'm on TV. But they don't do a damn thing. They don't do anything corrective to get on board the necessary train of the Constitution. I'm going to read from a memory card that was worded by one of the very rare, decent, law-abiding individuals and constitutional gentlemen, Mr. Edward J. Osborne. This was on the card that were given to the people that went to the funeral home. And he writes, "For those I love, for those that love me, when I am gone, release me, let me go. I have so many things to see and do. I thank you for the love you each have shown, but now it's time I travel alone. So grieve a while for me if grieve you must, then let your grief be comforted by trust. It's only for a while we must part, so bless the memories, and then, when you come this way alone, I'll greet you with a smile and a welcome home." So this man was very highly thought of by family and friends, politicals, whatever, politicals that still have a soul. And it made me think of the fact that he nominated Cheryl Mitchell to fill the Ward 3 vacancy. And the fact that he would do that should speak volumes about Cheryl Mitchell, in the sense that Mr. Osborne took the time to nominate her. Think about that, if you will, when you go to elect a new alderman for Ward 3. Do you think Mr. Osborne did not think hard and clearly about his choice and or nomination for Cheryl Mitchell? This is one of the hardest working community advocates in Manchester. Over the years, she and her husband and Mr. Osborne shared many concerns for the needs of this community. Cheryl does not mind rolling up her sleeves and getting the job done. So if you will, take this into consideration when you cast your vote for a new Ward 3 alderman, and remember what Mr. Osborne recommended. There is no doubt he knew what and why he nominated Cheryl Mitchell, and if you vote for her, you will find out why Mr. Osborne recommended her for the job in the first place. The truly disturbing perceived processes of shackling the education systems of this community smack of totalitarianism on a national scale. And it scares the heck out of me, because my sister's grandchildren are at elementary and junior high school age. And I don't know what they're going through each day when they go to school in the different parts of Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And I can't help but wonder if they're being treated fairly. And all other children, whether they're refugee or not, they are human beings. And in this country, human beings are allowed to be considered valued, constitutionally speaking. And if they don't have the wherewithal to learn, it's because they started out in an environment where education was not possible. And even if it was a different language and a different education system. They have to come here to start from scratch. They have to start learning how to speak English, to understand the mathematical equations, to understand the reading materials, to understand the history of this country. And if it's properly taught and ethically taught and constitutionally taught, they will learn. But this country still needs slaves. And so if you keep a certain segment or a certain percentile of the community, whether they're refugee or not, or immigrant or not, no matter what human tribe they come from, they're not going to get that education. And those people will be looking for work where they'll get $1.298 an hour to support themselves and their families, and do very hard work and do it well. Because their personal pride allows them to do the job, even if they hate it. Even if it's not the best job that they would like to have. because they have responsibility to themselves and to their families, those who act responsibly. So this country, well, the American flag stands for freedom and justice for all. It's almost like a camouflage. It's sort of like fool's gold. It looks like gold, but it really isn't. And until you try to spend it, you don't find out that it's not worth anything. And look, Diet Coke. How long? It's been at least 3 decades, maybe more, that this has been known because of the aspartame content, the poisonous chemical content of this sugar substitute that has killed millions across the world. And still, our own government, when you see these Diet Coke commercials on television, I almost want to throw up because it's such a bunch of baloney. It's a bunch of baloney. They put up all these party atmosphere, just like Splenda does with cooking in the kitchen, in almost a fairy tale environment, to cook up all these wonderful, good-tasting treats that are full of chemicals that will poison your family, that will poison yourself, that will poison your children, that will poison your animals. We have formaldehyde. We have MSG that irritates the nervous system, especially if you eat a big bag of potato chips or Doritos or Fritos. Your system is overwhelmed with this irritant to the nerves, and they'll include it in like a meal. You know, you get like Subway, you get a sandwich or a sub, you get a drink, and then you get a bag of either potato chips or Doritos or whatever. And if you're drinking a diet drink, you've got aspartame in the diet drink, you've got MSG in the potato chip or the Doritos or the Fritos, and it tastes good, but it starts irritating your nervous system. And if you do it on a daily basis or a very frequent basis, you start to become ill, because the human system was not made to be poisoned. That's why God put plants and fruits on this planet, and leaves and herbs that treat naturally whatever ails the person. But these people, through the centuries, have gotten away with bribing all these former officials that are now dead in the ground, passing their legacy on to the next set of politicians in all of their titles and in all of their positions, to continue the poisoning of American and world peoples. And then they pay all this advertisement on television. Comcast has to be one of the richest networks on the planet, because all they do is advertise all of this junk on between programs. These people have disrespected God's law and man's law. You know, I was doing a little bit of research the other day, and I came across a book. I came across this book that I bought for $1 at the book bank of one of the Hannaford stores, and it talks about the first hominids. They were not in the Garden of Eden. Modern humans belong to the mammalian order of primates, which originated about 55 million years ago. They comprise the only extant hominid species, and extant is the opposite of extinct. The earliest hominid was Australopithecus, the southern ape, a small-brained intermediate between apes and humans that was capable of standing and walking upright. Homo habilis, the first known human, appeared at least 2 million years ago. But here, according to the Bible, the Big Bang happened when Garden of Eden came into being, which was many millions of years after the universe was formed and after Earth was formed. The Big Bang Theory is the prevailing cosmological model for the earliest known periods of its universe and subsequent large-scale evolution. It states that the universe was in a very high-density state and then expanded. But according to science, the first hominids were part ape and part human. And maybe there was a reason for that. Only God knows, because he's the only one that could possibly answer, that particular question. But between science and religion, there's a big gap, and one of the biggest questions, unanswered questions that I've ever spoken about, with regard to the Garden of Eden, is if there was only Adam and Eve, where did the wives of the two sons that Adam and Eve had, where did they come from? Was there human life outside of the Garden of Eden? And why was the Garden of Eden such a specific necessity if there were already humans on the planet? Where did all of the people that became a part of religious history come from before hominids, or after hominids, I should say? There's a lot of unanswered questions. It's not an insult to religion of any kind. It's just an unanswered question that leaves me wondering why there's no answer. How come there's no valid answer to how Adam and Eve, who made an honest mistake? See, if God is so forgiving, then why is it that they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden? Because they ate an apple. They were tempted by an entity, allegedly a negative entity, in the Garden of Eden. So why was there a negative entity in the Garden of Eden in the first place? These are things that haunt my mind because it's not logical. I'm a very logical person. Being a Pisces, that's part of my mindset. I don't understand how you can make sense of something that doesn't make sense. How you can explain how Adam and Eve had two sons, and they knew how to grow their food. They had tilling machines of the kind, hand machines of the kind. The animals that came along to pull the plow, all of these things. Where did they get the intellect to do that? How did they know what seed went where and what it was going to grow? There's just a void between, there's no parallel, there's no connection. It just leaves this wide gap open of misinformation or no information. I am truly confused about how it all came into being in the first place, and how could something have a beginning that doesn't have an end, or an end that doesn't have a beginning. It's very confusing. But I've experienced enough spiritual incidences in my life. And I spoke about this earlier this year or last year. When I was married, I lived in Norfolk, Virginia. And one day I got in my car. I had a Chevy Camaro, the one with the high back end. And I went, the light turned green, and I went, and it was a very wide 4-lane city road. But my car stalled, and I drifted into this left-hand turn. But I wasn't quite into it. I was right at the beginning of it. And out of all the lanes that were empty, this one Ford Fairlane came at me. I just had like a microsecond. I looked up, and I took the car out of park and put it in drive, and he hit me. The car went flying through the air, and it went this way, across the path of cars that were coming this way. The door flew open, and I felt two sets of hands hold me against the seat because I didn't have my seatbelt on, because when I was trying to get the car going, I had taken my seatbelt to turn around and deal with the shift. And I should have fallen out of the car. I should have gone through the windshield because the impact was so severe that the whole back end of the car ended up pushed up against the back of the the front seat of the car. I was wedged in there. It was like, it was flat. It was just crushed flat. And the car kept going, and it flew over the intersection where the cars were coming, and it landed on this greenery. And the car was still going, and I had my right foot. I stepped on the pedal, the brake pedal, and I just missed hitting the tree by inches. And that one incident, out of all the time that I had lived up to that time, was the telling that there is something beyond anything that we really experience on this planet, some of us, that is there to protect. When it's not your time to go, you can outlive just about anything. The little girl that was in the well for how many days, over 10 years ago? And she was singing, 3-year-old little girl, singing. And she said there were angels there talking to her, and they finally rescued her. And that started my quest to try to make sense of what didn't make sense. And I've read and read and read so many books, and I've read how people on the other side of the planet believe in God. And it doesn't surprise me that they might have had some experience similar to the coming of Christ on the other side of the world, because God created all of these human tribes. So what he created them, what? So they could be subjugated by other human tribes? I don't think so. And so here in the United States, especially here in Manchester, there's a melting pot. They're brought here because the programs are federally subsidized so that the agencies that need to keep in business are in business. And they put these refugees and immigrants in the worst possible housing that is condoned by City Hall. And their children die. And if you're a disabled person or in a wheelchair, then for sure you have no protection whatsoever. And this is the government that runs Manchester, who has connections to the State House, and the State House has connections to Washington. And so it's passed the buck on constitutionality on a grand scale. And if you think I'm being unfair or disrespectful, I am not. This is still a free country. And if somebody thinks I've offended them, call me and talk to me about it. And point out to me where I might be wrong. But until you're not living in the bloody hell that is this kind of life in this community for so many people, then you can't say anything because you're not living it. And you're not doing anything about ending it. You're not doing anything about enforcing the rule of law that applies to everybody, even the worst criminal. But that doesn't happen in Manchester, New Hampshire. It just doesn't happen. The Koch family that started out as a very good set of people, look what they've done to our world. And do you think that our government is going to arrest them for all the criminality that they have sponsored in our country and overseas? Of course not. So why does our federal government exist at all? They seem to be impotent. They have no muscle to bring these kind of people to justice and hold them accountable. because, like I said once before, there are links in a chain that have this planet in its stranglehold. Just picture the planet of Earth, shackled by thousands of links of chain that incorporate the people of each and every country who have gotten on the gravy train of greed and control, totalitarianism. And you get the idea. I probably have, 2 minutes left, John? Not even. Okay.
About to give you the wrap.
Okay. It's time for me to go. I wish you well. I wish you knowledge. I wish you freedom because you're entitled to it. So long until next time.